Hey coders, welcome back. This is project number 7 for the coding contest. You'll find that this one's quite a bit more challenging than the previous ones, but I hope you'll learn some cool techniques with your coding that can help you with other projects down the road. We're going to have for this project a robot that the player is going to control as it goes around to collect items off the surface of Mars, but we're going to imagine that there's some malfunctioning robots that are trying to attack our robot, and so we'll need the player to avoid those as they go around to collect the objects. Okay, so we're going to use 4 different sprites for this one, and we're going to want a surface of Mars. So go ahead and get rid of the cat, and let's just paint a backdrop on this one. Convert to bitmap, pick to a nice surface of Mars looking color, and let's fill that in. And once we put in the background color, we can go ahead and add some different details to the surface of Mars. I like the idea of some craters and maybe some hills or ridges or canyons, whatever. The background for this one is not going to matter because the robots aren't going to be affected by it at all. It's just there for decoration. Okay, so there's our nice, beautiful Mars landscape. We can put in some different colors there just to make it look extra fancy. I bet yours will look better than mine, but there we go. Okay, back to the code. Let's add some sprites. We're going to add 4 sprites for this one. We need some Martian rocks, and we need some robots. We're going to use both of these sprites for the robots that Scratch provides, so add those in separately. And then we need something for the player to chase after. So we're going to use this star one. That could represent a variety of different things on the surface of the planet. Doesn't really matter for our sake. And so we're just going to put a star on there. I'm going to set the star to size 40. Let's set the retro robot to size 30. And the player's robot at size 30. And make the rock size 40. Okay, first things first. We're going to put some of these rocks around on the screen, but they don't look very Martian. So come to Costumes, click on your paint bucket, and let's choose some different colors and make those Martian rocks look a little more Marsy. Okay, first thing we want to do is something that we haven't done before for the coding contest. We want to only have one sprite for the rocks here, but we want that to make more than one rock on the screen once we run the program. We're going to use something called a clone for that. So over here under Control, there's a block, there's 3 here that say when I start as a clone, create a clone, and delete this clone. We're going to be using these today. But first, let's do the green flag. So that's an event. When the green flag is clicked, we want this rock to come to Control. And let's repeat 5 times. Make a clone of myself. Okay? And under looks, motion, under motion, go to a random position when the flag is clicked. And so now, when the green flag is clicked and the program is running, there's now actually 5 sprites. Well, there's 6, right? Because we have one and we made 5 clones of it. A clone is just a copy. And so right now, because we ran the program, there's the 5 we started with, and no, the 1 we started with and the 5 copies we made. If we hit the stop sign, look what happens. See how they all disappear but 1? That's because those other copies of the rocks only existed as clones, and they only are there when the program is running. So let's hit the green flag again, and there's our 6 rocks now. Okay. Now it's interesting to think about why they all appear on top of each other. Well, if you think about it, it's because we didn't tell them to go anywhere else, right? The clones have all of the same properties as the original one. Well, that's a little boring, so let's change that up a little bit. Go under Control, and for the clones that are created, we want them to go to a random position as well. Okay, so when the flag is clicked, our original one's going to go to a random position, and 5 times it's going to create a clone of the rock. And when it starts as a clone, those new ones will also go to a random position. So now, when we click the green flag, all of our clones, each clone appears in a slightly different spot. Okay, so that is an interesting way to, even though you have just one rock sprite, we can add 5 rocks to the screen. Okay, all right, let's move on now. Let's do the robot that the player is going to control. So click on this sprite right here. This code is going to be pretty simple. We could do a forever loop like this that says forever, after you hit the green flag, go to the mouse position, and that'll make the robot just follow around the mouse. I think that's a little bit too easy on that one, so we want to make this a little bit harder. And instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to tell the robot to point towards the mouse and then just move. Okay, so what that'll do is this sprite right here is going to try to figure out where the mouse is and move towards it in just 20 steps. Okay, so watch this. So if you move the mouse fast, you can see that the robot it tries to move towards it, but it doesn't arrive at it until you stop moving the mouse. Okay, let's stop that. Now, we don't want our robot to go upside down, right? So under motion, there's one of these options here we haven't used towards the bottom that says set rotation style. We don't want this robot to rotate. So let's reset the direction to, I think, 0. No, let's set that back to 90. And now when the program runs, we're going to set it to not rotate. So even though the sprite is pointed at the mouse, it doesn't change the way it appears on the screen because we told it right here to not rotate. Stop that again. It's going too fast, so let's do a control loop, control statement inside the forever loop to wait 0.1 seconds. Okay, so now the robot tries to go to the mouse. And you could make that a little bit more smooth by making the steps go less and the wait time be less too. That's pretty slick the way the robot is following the mouse around. You'll see when it hits the mouse it gets a little glitchy, right? Because it's always going to move. You could put in a statement there that says if it's not touching the robot then move, but we'll keep it simple and leave it the way it is like that. Okay, we could add in some animation here for looks. Do the next costume, and now as the robot is moving it also looks a little animated. I don't know that I want it to have this backwards costume, so I'm just going to get rid of that, and it'll look like it's moving around and changing the way it looks as it moves. Okay, now let's do the retro robot. The retro robot, what it's going to do, these are evil, malforming or malfunctioning robots. They're going to try to capture the player's robot, and so they're going to chase after the player's robot. So for their code, we're going to do the green flag, and let's do repeat. Let's just have 4 robots. So we're going to repeat this 4 times, and let's do right here, create clone of myself. So if we run the flag right here, we now have 4 of these robots that look exactly the same as the original added to the program. Okay, now let's make them look a little bit different though. If you come in here and say next costume, before it creates the clones, you'll notice that these robots that are created have the different costumes available to that sprite, which is a really simple way to have 3 of them are the same, but different looking robots, all based on one sprite. So, repeats 4 times, change the costume, then create a clone. Alright, and then what we want to do is add a control statement here that says when I start as a clone, we're going to have a random position because we don't want them to all start in the exact same spot, and then a forever loop, so that's under control. And these robots are forever going to try to go towards the player's robot. So we want to have the motion point towards the player's robot is this one here called robot. And then we want it to, once it's pointed in that direction, we're going to make them a little bit slower, so we're going to move them 4 steps. Okay? And so now we have 4 robots trying to chase after our robot. Now they go a little bit too fast though, so we need to slow them down. That's a control statement. Let's have them, oops, that needs to be inside here. Let's have them wait 0.5 seconds or something like that. And when the program runs, they will all slowly come towards ours. Well, that's probably way too slow. Let's do 0.1 maybe. Okay, see how those robots are all chasing after us now? Well, all of them are except one, right? Let's stop for a second. This robot right here, let's change his direction back to 90, doesn't have any instructions after it creates the clones. That's okay though. Here's what I think I want to do. I think what I want to do is under looks, I want to hide that original, and then when the clones are created, let's have those turn visible. And then that'll make that one with no code disappear. Now look on the screen though, how many robots are chasing us? It's just 4. So let's do that, change that to a 5 now. So the original will hide, it'll repeat 5 times, change costumes, create a clone. When the clones though will reveal themselves, go to a random position, and then start chasing after the player's robot. It would actually make more sense to swap these two, so I'm going to do that. We want them to go to a random position and then show up on the screen. Okay, do you notice how some of those robots are going upside down though? Under looks, no, under motion, we want to set their rotation style as don't rotate. And if you do it over here before it creates the clones, that's fine. Or you could put that over here, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave it there. And so now our 5 malfunctioning robots are all chasing after the player's robot, and there's a little bit more we're going to do. We want to add some artificial intelligence to this guy, okay? These retro robots. It's not that much fun to constantly be pursued by things. It would make more sense if you could have some strategy involved. So these malfunctioning robots, we're going to give them a little bit of a brain and tell them, hey, robots, you're not allowed to walk through rocks, okay? Because if you're walking through a rock, then we want the player to be able to use the rocks strategically. So inside this forever loop, let's do a control statement that says if sensing, touching the rock, then let's have it bounce backwards. Okay, so motion, we're going to move, instead of moving forward 4 steps, we're going to move -4 steps. Okay, so think about that. The evil robot's going to be walking around. These rocks are going to be randomly located around the screen. The evil robots are going to point towards the player's robot and move forward, but if they hit a rock, then they're going to move backwards. Okay, let's see what happens. Watch this guy right here as it hits that rock. Blink. It looks like it just stops, right? And if you think about our code, that's exactly what it should do, because it moves forward, hits the rock, and then moves exactly backward. Now if I come over here, those robots can keep going, and if I come over here, then these robots can keep going as well. So, well, that one can't. But basically, the player can now use the rocks as an advantage to trap the bad robots. Okay, let's make this a different number though. So instead of, it's going to move forward, but if it hits a rock, it's going to move backwards. 8 instead. That should actually make it look like, see this yellow one right here? How they're kind of bouncing when they hit the rocks. I think that looks better, because it's kind of like the robots are like struggling. Help, get me out of here. Trying to get around it. Okay, now you could program your rocks a little bit smarter than that. Maybe when they hit a rock, they back up and then move to the right or something like that. I'm going to let you program to see if you want to make your robots, the evil robots, any smarter. Okay, let's stop that and let's talk about our star sprite for a second. The point of the game is to have our player go and pick up some of these stars that are going to be spread around the field. Okay, so the nice thing about this is we can actually duplicate some of our code. So if you come to the rock 1 and drag all of this code down to the star and drag all of this down to the star and hit the green flag again, you instantly have 6 stars that appear on the screen in random locations, which is pretty cool. Let's hit stop. Maybe we only want 4 of those though. Okay. No, let's do that as 5, and let's do the same thing we did with the evil robot, which was let's hide the original and then show the copies. Okay, so now there will be just be 5 that show up on the screen. Why are there 6 there? Oh, because I'm changing it on the rock sprite. Sorry. So we had 5. That's fine. We want 6 rocks. Come back to the star, and these codes are overlapping a little bit. We want to hide the original and show the clones. And now we should have 5 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this will be nice because we don't want to have 2 copies of the code we're going to do next. Come under Control, and once the clones are started, all we want to do is have them do something when the robot picks them up. So that's inside a forever loop that I just put here. Do a control statement if, and this is just going to say a sensing element, if touching, and think about that, if it's touching the robot, then let's just get rid of that clone, delete this clone. Okay, and so our 5 stars will just disappear one by one as the player's robot looks like it's picking them up. All right, that's pretty much our program. I'm going to challenge you, if you'd like to turn this into a much harder of a game. For example, you could have a score, so it ups the score each time. One of the things you could do is, instead of deleting the clone, maybe it just moves the star, so the star moves around the screen each time you pick it up. You could have some things in here where if the robot touches the player's robot, something bad happens. Maybe it's just a noise, or maybe you could have a health for the player's robot, and each time it touches an evil robot it loses some health, and whenever the health gets down to 0, it's game over. I'm going to leave that up to you if you want to make your puzzle a little bit harder. Or not the puzzle, the game a little bit harder. Hope you had fun with this one, learned a little bit about clones, because clones are also a really powerful way to do a little bit of coding to make really cool programs.